Hey everybody, welcome to VLOGMAS here on the Because of Me Network. Hope you're doing well today. This is day 13 of uploaded vlogs. Yes, I know I've missed a couple of days. I had to go grocery shopping on Monday, and on Tuesday, yesterday, I had a really bad migraine. Like, out of all the things that my mother could have given me, it's the migraines. So I didn't have time, the effort, or the energy to put something out before, 8 o'clock. I was like, yeah. I spent most of the night sleeping, so, it was just it was just one of those things. I just didn't have time to prepare anything. But I've prepared something for you today. So, what am I talking about? Well, I've told you before that I'm a live sound engineer by trade. Okay, one of the trades that I have is that I rock up to a venue, stand behind that desk, twiddle a few knobs, pull a few levers, mix a few faders, and walk away at the end of the show either happy or miserable because I've made a mistake. But I want to tell you some stories about what I've seen doing those shows, because some of the things I've seen have been wild, and some of them are universal, some of them are specific only to me. And I thought, you know what? I would talk about some of the weird and wacky things that I've seen while doing live sound. Live sound is a strange beast. It's a difficult beast. And it's something that you have to love to do, okay? You can't just half-butt it. You got to throw your whole butt into it, right? I'm keeping it PG, everybody. You've got to know what you're doing. You've got to know the equipment you're working with, and you've got to know the people you're working with. That being said, a lot of people I've worked with, I've only met once or twice. So it's been difficult, shall we say, for me to work in this area, and that's fine. But I enjoy the work when I'm not having panic attacks, which sadly ended my ended the fun that I was having. Back in 2018, I took a couple of years off from doing live sound, and then I got back into it around about the pandemic time. Or just after the pandemic. The pandemic for me is 2020 to 2021. I know for a lot of people it's a lot of different things, but for me that's when the majority of the things happened. And I did a lot of sound work from mid 2021 onwards at the church that I work at. And I've done live sound gigs at festivals. I've done a couple of bands, so it's a change of pace, shall we say, from what I do regular 8 to 5, where I've got time to think and tweak and manipulate and second guess and go, that's not right, that should be better, I could do this, I could change this. When you're doing it live, you've got to do it live, and there is a little bit of stress to it. And before 2018 I couldn't handle it. Now I think I do it a lot better. I'm more mature, I am more grounded, I am medicated in the areas that were causing me issues, like anxiety and ADHD in particular. And, I think that I could do a good job if I was given an opportunity. It's just trying to find the right opportunity, and that's a different story for a different day. But I've waffled here for nearly 4 minutes, and I haven't told you some of the things that I've seen. So, first things first is the artists themselves, okay? And I've seen imitations. Now, look, I'm not going to knock on any type of band out there, okay? There are original bands, cover bands, tribute bands, and they all work hard and they all do their best. But if you are not in a tribute band, but you are in a cover band, in my opinion, you should be covering music, not doing a tribute to music, if that makes sense. So I was doing a festival a couple of years ago, and there was a lady who was lead singer of a band. It was their first gig, and they were doing Doll Parts by Hall. And I don't want to clown on these people because I'm not a great singer myself. But she proceeded to try and embody the spirit of Courtney Love, and it just came off as not artistic. It just came off as somebody laying on the floor screaming into a microphone. And that was slightly embarrassing. The crowd didn't know how to react when the song was over. It was a respectful silence, and I thought that, man, you don't need to do that. Just be yourself on the stage, Then there was another one who, not embarrassed herself, but made everybody feel uncomfortable in the room when she announced the subject matter of the song that she wrote. Now, I'm not going to go into it, because, I don't want to, I don't want to bring the mood down. I don't want to upset people who've been through similar things. But bringing attention and awareness to something is great if that's what you're trying to do, but explaining it casually to a room full of half-drunk people who want to listen to music, it kind of, it kind of sucked the mood out of the building for a few minutes, made everything very, very awkward and uncomfortable. Now, she did get a few, people ask if she was okay and everything like that. Now, it wasn't depression, but it was, it did have to do with death. And, it just... You can write those kind of songs. You can write any kind of song that you want to. But if you explain it vaguely, you're going to bum out your audience. And I've witnessed that. Then you have people who, like me, think that they can sing. And I have seen enough of these people. Now, I think that open mic nights are a very, very good thing. I think they're a good resource for people to learn whether or not they've got what it takes to perform in front of a room. And some people don't go to those events and try and sing the material that they've got in front of them, and they can't keep up with it. Now, with my songs that I wrote, that I've written back in the day, I couldn't keep up with the keys that they were written in. And so my demo takes were all wobbly and straining, and I couldn't keep up with it. But I knew my limitations, right? And even though I was only doing the singing so that I have a reference point, there are some people who go out there with voices like mine, and they get polite applause, and people are afraid to tell them, I guess, because you've got to know what you've got, right? And I'm not talking down to these people. I think it takes a lot of courage to get up on stage with a guitar and a band and play. It's just somebody in the band needs to tell you, you need to step back and let someone else handle the vocals, So, and these are not bad people either. These are not, delusional people. These are good, kind-hearted people. I mean, death metal vocalists, I've met a handful of them when I worked at a festival a couple of years ago. Nicest people you'd meet. They're covered in tattoos and piercings and, all the stereotypes that you'd picture with the death metal and black metal bands. And, I was running the monitors. I was running the monitors for one of the bands that was on stage. And somebody who I didn't realize was one of the future singers was next to me and wanted to know how things were going and how it worked. And I explained to her how it went down and everything like that. She was as sweet as can be, and, very, very soft-spoken and very, very shy. And then as soon as the first chord was blasted into that room, like the jacket came off, the corset was on, and she was just screaming gutturally into this microphone. And I was impressed, because when somebody is very, very talkative and a little shy, and to come out screaming and removing articles of clothing, I mean, real nice people, good people. But the problem with certain acts that you work with is not ego, but, nice people turn into very, 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 very snobby people when it comes to musical equipment, I found. And, people were bringing in full Marshall stacks into a room that held 200 people. You don't need that, because you're going to overpower the rest of the band, and we're not going to be able to mix you to sound good because you're bleeding into the main area anyway. We can't mix you. We'd have to turn the bass up and the rhythm guitar up, to compensate your Marshall stack, and then you turn it. Just piece of advice for everybody out there: if you know the room that you're playing in. If it requires certain equipment, bring that equipment. Don't bring equipment just because you think it looks cool. Okay, a Marshall stack is not good for a bar gig. If you got an outside gig, great, bring it. If you got a bar gig or an indoor gig, don't bring it. Especially if the room fits under 200 people. That's my advice, but you can take it or not take it. And there's been things that I've seen, right, that just blew my mind when I did that festival a couple of years ago. So the first band comes on, and they're like a 6-piece band, right? You got guitar, bass, saxophone, trumpet player, drums, guitarist, percussionist, and painter. Yes, percussionist and painter. So there's a dude up there with his back to the crowd painting something while the band are playing. And he's painting along to the music, and he's tambourine and paint and tambourine and backing vocals. And it was really, really cool, the painting that he did. And, you know, he gave it to the bar, or had the bar sell it for him, right, at the show. I thought that was great. I thought, man, that's so unique. And then the next to last band also had a painter who painted the room, you know, and I thought, it's that old joke, isn't it? You know, if I'd seen a band painting on stage, I'd have 2 nickels. It isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. You know, so it was a real, real good show. I've never seen that, but twice in one night was brilliant. Then you've got equipment failures. Man, equipment failures. I've worked at many a gig where the equipment just doesn't work. I remember working one time for the holodecks where half the room started splittering, excuse me. So like it was going on and off, on and off, on and off. And I tried my best, but when you've got half the equipment in the room dying and you don't know how to fix it, the only way you know how to fix it is to turn everything off and turn everything back on again, but you can't do that in the middle of a gig, you know. So then there was the time where in the same building with the same band a few months earlier, there was a power outage right at the last song. And I remember the band got out, the holodecks got out, and they played Wonderwall acoustically to end the show because it was like next to last song. It was near the end of the night, you know. But when the equipment fails, there's nothing really you can do but watch in disaster. You know, there's only so much you can do, right? Now, usually when I do the church gigs that I do, equipment failures usually means that the battery runs out on the handheld microphone, right? I can fix that, not a problem. Or the iPad is not wanting to connect to the board. I can work around that. But when you have half the room not working with no power, and you're not getting sound out of it, and you don't know why, it's yeah. There's a couple of other things too, and I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to clown on anybody like that, but I think that, you know, if you go to a festival and your band is not playing and you're a fan of that, don't take it out on the sound guy. We didn't make the gig. We just there. You know, we're working. You know, I want your favorite to be playing too. That means more fun for us. But he wasn't. He's not there. I can't help it. You know what I mean? There've been fights too. There's been at least 2 fights that I've seen working for the holodecks. One of them was in my second show, working with them, and I'm trying to get a message to them. Hey, stop playing! There's a fight on the floor. You know, that was fun. And people dressing inappropriately. Look, right? I'm not a prude, but I think there should be standards, right? If you want to come to a gig dressed up in a bikini top, shorty shorts, and like see-through shirt, perfect. If you want to do that, that's great. If you want to dress head to toe like an Amish, perfect. But don't show up in the shorty shorts and the bikini top at a church. You know what I mean? The church service that we do is a very, very niche church service. It encompasses AA meeting as well as a concert that goes with it. And I just thought, no, that's not appropriate for the church. You shouldn't show up, you know, throw a sweater on or something, you know, throw a t-shirt on. Sorry about that. My brain went for a walk because I'm talking. Another gig that I did was an audience member was mad at me, right, because he couldn't hear the band playing. Now, I've got the band mixed the way that they need to be mixed. And there's a second sound engineer who works for the casino. And she is in charge of the level of the sound. I'm in charge of the mix. She's in charge of the overall level. And there was a steakhouse next to the stage who would complain all the time that the bands were too loud and it was ruining their atmosphere and it was ruining their ambience. So up to a certain time of day, the bands would have to play at a quieter level. I wasn't in charge of that, and this guy was just seething at me the whole night, following me around, trying to grab the iPad, trying to mix, and yeah, that wasn't fun. That was also a night where I got shoved out the way when I was trying to listen to make sure the sound was good by somebody, and I turned to him, I showed him the iPad, it's like, I'm trying to mix here, and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I'll buy you a drink. I don't drink, so, you know, they save their money. But, yeah, that was, you know, that was pretty wild. But I'll tell you this, and then I'll hop off for the day. The 3 things that I thought were the most wild things that will stick with me, okay? First things first, at the church there's a young lady who plays X's and O's by Elle King. Not appropriate for the room that she's playing in, I don't think. You know, you've got the cross in the background and you're singing about orgasms. You know what I mean? And at the church gig, it is, you know, like I've said before, it is an AA meeting, and some of the songs singing about getting drunk and getting high, maybe not the best place to perform those. But the weirdest thing that I've ever seen at a concert, I was doing a gig with the Holodecks. There was a birthday party. The stage was here. Stage was at the front, and stage next to the stage on the right hand side was a table, VIP table. Then he had the booth and where I was working, right? And there was a woman up there who was doing the traditional drunk white girl dance. And the drunk white girl dance, for those of you who don't know it, is they dance with their knees together and they wiggle their hips and they bend their knees and, you know, they kind of try to slither. It looks stupid, right? It really does. And she was dancing on the table and hooping and hollering, and the band played a song by Meredith Brooks called Bitch, right? Which I always found funny that whenever they played songs that were specific female lead singers, but that's a different song for a different day. And she gets into it, right? She gets into the song. She's singing along. She's dancing along. She's drinking along, cheering. And she sits down. And she puts a leg up on the table. And she grabs one of the paper plates from the birthday VIP table and starts fanning herself. Okay? She fans her face. She fans her body. And then she opens her legs and starts fanning her private area, shall we say. And I'm looking at this, and I turn to the sound, the lighting guy who they had at the time, and he looked back at me, and we're both sitting there going, "This isn't happening. Surely not. You are not fanning yourself in front of 500 people. You know, maybe you are. I don't know. Maybe that's up to you. But that was the thing that stuck with me. You know, I had a hard time concentrating for the next couple of songs after that because it just threw me through a loop. Now, look, if you're sweaty and need to air off, that's great. But don't do it in a room full of people. People could see you. You know, it's embarrassing. I don't know. Anyway, I've rambled on for nearly 20 minutes. Good Lord. So, yeah. So I'm just gonna hop off here. That's my life as a sound engineer. You see some stuff. You have some fun. You make bands and artists sound as good as you can possibly be, and you get to hear music for free, which I love. Although you're too stressed to enjoy it because, you know, because like I said, I would have panic attacks during shows when things would go a little bit wrong, you know. But I'm better, thankfully. So yeah, that's gonna be it. So I'll be back hopefully tomorrow with another episode of VLOGMAS. And until then, take it easy, everybody. Bye.